Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sowtastic podcast. My name is Roshan Hindia. We have with us a very awesome guest today. Her name is Ruchita Patel. And we wanted to bring her on because she has a very special perspective that I know is going to be very useful for a lot of people out there. She's a single mom raising two awesome kids and actually decided to teach them finances at an early age. So Ruchita, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Good. How about you, Roshan?
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. So you know what, before we start with anything else, why don't we do this? Let's start to know a little bit more about you, your background, your family. Please tell us more about you.
Sure. Hey, everybody. This is Ruchita. I live in Florida. I'm a single mom of two 9-year-old twin girls. Absolute blessing to have them. On my background, I have a master's degree and I worked for an aerospace company. I am an integration program manager here. I mean, I live in Space Coast, so every other person you talk to kind of, works for aerospace. My background, I moved here from India when I was 17 with my family. My mom was a teacher for as long as I remember back in India. She taught kindergarten and first grade, and my dad was a serial entrepreneur. I say serial because, he had one of his businesses that he always had. But on the side, he always had funded his dreams per se, or his ideas. He was one of those, he would keep trying something and another, he would fail, and then he would take a little bit of time to mourn over it, and then he'll get back up again and try something else. If I remember it, like probably 11 to 12 different ventures that he may have tried, some small, some a little bigger. Wow. And out of that, I've seen 2 succeed, 1 kind of took off, and other one made some money, so they were in complete failure, but the rest of them were, So it was interesting to see how my dad recovered after every failure he had.
I have to say, I actually think it's an awesome thing that you grew up with a parent who taught you how to succeed through failures. What I've learned through life is you have to fail multiple times in order to find something that you're actually successful at. And the fact that you got to learn that from your dad firsthand, that's awesome. Now, let me ask you this. Why was it important for you to sow that financial knowledge in the first place into your kids? Just help me understand your philosophy a little bit, please.
So my parents are traditional Indian parents, right? They didn't believe that kids needed to know finances. Even though they both treated me and my older brother equally, they always thought that, girls don't need to really know finances. And I never knew what the mortgage was, or what was the interest rate on the mortgage, or how much a car loan, how do you go get a car loan, right? Even though I drove a car before I got married. And after I got married, my ex, he's an ex now, but at that time he had the same philosophy that a man of the house would handle all the finances and female doesn't really need to know, kind of protected shelter, whatever the philosophy's there, right? Mm. And when I became a single parent, then I realized how little I knew, how do you go get a car loan? What is a good interest rate? Where do you begin from? Even as a young adult, right, fresh out of college, when I applied for a credit card for the first time and got one, I didn't know how to properly manage it. And I created somewhat of a little debt for me, and it affected my credit score. And it took me a while to get my credit score up again, right? So I've just kind of learned a lot of my own, and they were kind of harder. And one of the quote that has impacted me quite a bit from John Maxwell, he always talks about learning from an evaluated experience, right? Instead of just learning from an experience, he said that it would be better if you look at somebody else's experience and you can learn from it yourself instead of failing yourself and learning it that harder way. That has always impacted me. And I want to teach my girls how to be financially independent, regardless of the age they're at, right? I don't want them to learn the lessons that I learned in late 30s, when they're in their late 30s. I would rather have them have this knowledge. So let's say if one of them happens to be a serial entrepreneur like my father was, by the time they graduate college, or even when they're in the college, they would know how to go get a loan, know how to build a good credit so you can get a loan, and what an interest rate is, and what is a good interest rate. It's a stock market. For the longest time I didn't know how stock market worked, or what happens to my 401k. I knew that I had a 401k, I just didn't know how does it grow, how do you invest in it. So it became really important to me that my girls need to learn all of this at a young age so they don't struggle like I did.
Okay. So I think that actually helps me understand why you started teaching in the first place. But what's your advice to parents that think, well, my kids don't need to learn anything because that's the way I grew up. They just need to focus on, the typical STEM stuff, right? How do you fight that notion?
I think think STEM is important, but knowing how to run your household is even important too, right? You don't know what's going to happen to you. You may have created this amazing, funds for your kids and your estate and whatnot, but you could be a millionaire and you could leave millions of dollars for your kid. But if you have never taught them on how to handle those millions or how to manage those millions, they can make millions to zero really fast, right? So coming from that, yes, STEM is important, right? All of that is really important. But at the same time, they can earn a seven-figure income. But if they've never learned how to manage that income, then they would have to keep repeating earning that seven-figure income for the rest of their life, right? Versus if you teach them at a young age, you earn a seven-figure income, and how do you make it into an eight-figure, out of that seven-figure? That's where my thought process lies in, that the kids these days, the world moves so fast. It sounds cliche because I used to laugh. My mother used to say that when I was young. Oh, our world was different, but it is different. It's very different, and it is going to be, because of technology, it's going to be 100 times different by the time my kids are a teenager, or into college, late teens in college, and once they come out of the college.
Wow. Okay. So then at what age did you start teaching your kids finances?
I started when they were 7 years old. I started learning a lot about stock market around that time when they were 7, because I didn't have a lot of knowledge. I wanted to know what happened to my 401k. So I'll be reading books, or I'll be watching like a YouTube video, or, there's some financial gurus that have amazing videos on YouTube that I'll be watching and trying to understand. And my daughter, one of them in particular, is very interested in learning about finances. She's very keen on learning how stocks work. So she would start asking me all these questions, and I realized, okay, she's really interested in it. Let me start teaching them. We did do little things for like a 7-year-old where, okay, here's, you do your chores, and here's your allowance, and you put 20% of it to give, and you put 30% of it to save, and you can use your 50% to purchase things that you want to purchase. And, you kind of let them fail a lot of times, because they would purchase things that is going to break tonight, or, or it would go into trash 2 days later. But you kind of teach them those lessons too. But then she started asking a lot of detailed questions. What are stocks? How does it work? How does it benefit the company? And I took that as an opportunity and kind of set both of them down and showed them how stocks work, and showed them that when you purchase your iPad, how does that help an Apple grow? Or versus when you purchase an Apple stock, for the same cost of that iPad, well, I want to upgrade my iPad, is going to cost, let's say, $500, versus you invested that $500 in Apple stock. 5 years down the road, that $500 can become $800. And that just blew her mind. Like, how is that possible? How does that work? And that was really important, because then she started applying that into everything that she started doing. So instead of taking that 50% of her allowance that she would get, they get $10 a week, right? It's not a lot, but it's something that to start them thinking on how to use money.
Okay.
Then she started taking that $5 that she gets to spend. She started saving money out of that. I noticed over probably 8-9 months when she started turning about 8, she started realizing that every time I get that $5, I don't have to go blow that $5 away. And then she's like, so if I take this money, if I put it in the bank, because then we started talking about how bank works, and how you get a small interest rate, and why would they give you interest rate, and how do you, then she's like, well, wouldn't you want to look for a bank that gives you like most interest rate? I'm like, yes, you do. But then you have to look for stability of that financial institution too. So we kind of got into that conversation. Then she would say, okay, so if I take that $20 savings that I have, that I didn't spend, and the other $18 that I've been saving of that 30% that we always save, if I put it into an actual bank account, would this money grow? Would it become like $50 at the end of the year? So I said, no, it would not become $50, but maybe like you may earn like $2 at the most, because you would keep adding. She's like, that's not a lot of money. But I said, imagine if the $2 was on the floor, would you bend down to pick it up? She's like, yes. I said, okay, so those $2 you didn't have. So that got her thinking, and she really wants to open a bank account. Okay. So I've given her a goal. Let's save $250. So we opened both of you a savings account starting at $250. In order to get that $250, they've come up with some ideas on how they're going to gain those $250. So they took about $10 out of both of them together, 10 each out of their allowance. Then they bought rainbow balloons. I don't know if you know what they are. They're little rubber bands. Okay. And girls or kids make bracelets out of them, or keychains and things like that, right?
Yes.
And so now they're selling rain balloons.
Oh,
So
wow.
they go to their friends' garage sales and they put up small booth for themselves and they sell $1 each. What they do is 50 cents out of that is going to go to St. Jude's Children's Hospital because this is a cancer month. And the
Hmm.
50 cents is what they're going to take into put in their pocket.
Hmm.
And they're hoping their goal by Christmas is to raise that $250, So they've kind of become a little entrepreneurs. And they're
Wow.
talking about maybe, in summer, because it starts getting hot here around like March, April timeframe. So they want to do lemonade stand, and make money out of that. So yeah, a
Hmm.
lot of lessons there.
Wow. So wait, so if I was taking notes while you were going through examples. So you're teaching them how to manage allowance. You're talking to them about bank, how to actually have like a checking or savings account. You're telling them about stocks and investments. You're teaching them entrepreneurship, the rainbow band and pretty soon lemonade stand. You're teaching them about, how to save for charity. You're teaching them delayed gratification. Like you're teaching them multiple concepts. Anything else that we haven't talked about that you're like doing practical things with your kids?
One thing that I just started, both of them have their own portfolios that I've had
Mm.
for them for the last couple of years, and it's growing a little bit at a time. From last 3 months or so, I started showing them how money's going up and down in it and how excited they get. Oh my God, Apple stocks went up. Look, I made this much money. I said,
Mm.
you kind of made it. You can't spend that money right now. It has to sit there and grow. The whole purpose of this portfolio is by the time, you're in your late teens or, early 20s, by the time you come out of college, you have a substantial amount of money in that. And I'm hoping that by the time I've taught them enough on how to grow that further. That's something new that I started doing in the last 2 months, kind of started showing them so they get the excitement. And sometimes they get sad too, because there's some, when the stock market kind of hit kind of like a bottom few weeks ago. I saw their excitement go down as well. But that's what I told them. It's okay. These are something long-term investment, and you just have to do your research in the company. And she's like, so can I take my money that I have? And can you put that and buy me some more? I said, yeah, we can talk about it when you're a little bit older. I think we're a little bit too young to make that decision on what you want to invest in. But yeah, we can definitely have that discussion.
Okay. So you're making the choices on the stocks that they invest in, correct? Whether it's
Correct.
blue chip or risky stocks or stable stocks. But you're making, as the parent, that decision, right?
Correct.
What challenges did you run into as you were trying to teach them finances? Any challenge that you're still trying to figure out? And specifically, if they're learning how to invest money from their allowance, how do you sort of fight that notion of, well, oh, my friends have XYZ toy or dresses or shoes or whatever the case is, and I want to get that for myself? How do you fight that idea of comparing themselves to their peers?
We do something called affirmations before we go to bed. And I've been doing them since they were really young, but in the last 2 years, they've grown quite a bit. It used to be like few lines that they can repeat after me. Now it has really grown. So I've started passively instilling in them that you don't have to compete with everybody else. You got to be happy with what you have. But it still comes, right? Fortunately for me, they go to school where they have uniform. So we don't ever compare about clothes or shoes. This is what you wear. Everybody wears same, right? But it comes about, well, she's got this cool backpack now, or, well, she brought this, now she has a Fitbit, or when my friend has a phone, when can I get that, right? Can I use my money to go buy it? So then we talk about, we go back to the drawing board of, do we really have to have everything that everybody else have? Then imagine how full our house would be, right? Are you happy with what you have? You have an iPad, it does all of the functions. How would you use it, right? I get her thinking into what would be your use of it. So then she started listing, well, I would be able to text my friends and I can take it to school and I can watch like kids YouTube video if I want to watch it. So I said, okay, how can you actually use that phone when you're in the school? No, we're not allowed to, we have to put our phones away. So I said, okay, when can you use it? Well, when I wait for you to come pick me up. Okay, so that's like 5-minute wait. So 5 minutes every day, right? And then when you come home, I said, okay, but the iPad does the same thing that the phone would do. Right? Is it okay? So now you're saying 25 minutes a week would be exciting because somebody else has a phone that would do a little different function than what an iPad would do. It's smaller, it's more compact. $25, 25 minutes a week, $1,100 for an iPhone. You tell me, is it worth it? Imagine how long will it take you to save up $1,100 if you were to use your money. Okay. And once it's gone, and then so we did the math. So it came to about like they will have to work for over 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Save up that money. And I said, 2 years worth of work for a phone. Do you really want it? And she really got thinking. She's like, that's a lot of time, mommy. I said, yes. It's 104 weeks. And her eyes just got really big, right? So I just kind of put it into a concept of, you want this, I understand. This is what it's going to take you to. Do you really want it? Is it still worth it? Are you still thinking about it? You think it's good value, you know? So that's what has worked so far. I'm sure when they're a little bit older, I'll have to come up with a different strategy. We'll deal with it there when we get there.
When we get there,
yeah. So it took a bit in the beginning, especially for the smaller things, you know, if you would go to Target, like it had become a thing. Well, I got my own money. I'm going to go buy it with my own money, right? It's my money. I earned it. You can't say no. And that's like one of the things they asked me first. So when you say that 50% that I can spend, I can really spend it, right? Like I don't have to go get a permission from you to go spend that money. I said, no, it's your money. You did the work, you earned it, you go spend it. So, but I can help you make wise decisions. You know, if I think that you can, if you come and ask me, hey, mommy, what do you think? I'll tell you my honest opinion. You may not like it. So in the beginning, there happened multiple times where, you know, they would go, I mean, they're kids, right? So it takes longer for them to get over their urge, like their intense urge of purchasing something, that instant gratification. And for the first few weeks when we were working with, you know, we don't always have to go spend that $5 that you have, they would still go spend it, right? And then she would realize that, oh, my wallet's empty. I don't have that $5 anymore. It happened multiple times where they bought a small toy for $5 or went to the dollar section that they have at Target and would buy some stuff and it would break, or they wouldn't care for it after an hour because it was shiny and exciting in the beginning, or they lost it. Like it has happened so many times. She would buy a keychain and she'll take it to school next day and she'll get so excited and then it's gone. She can't find it. So after like that happening multiple times, probably like month and a half, 2 months in a row, I started teaching them. Remember, we bought this 3 weeks ago. After you bought it, like an hour later, you realize, I don't really care for it. I would have rather have my $5 back in my wallet. It felt good to have that money in the wallet, right? Instead of having an empty wallet. So little by little, they started catching on. Okay, you know, it kind of does feel good to have money in the wallet instead of having the shiny new keychain or the pen that colors 5 different ways, you know, because I have those already. And so it did take a little bit. And as a parent, it was really hard to see them let that money go, right? It's like I really had to bite my tongue and say, oh, I really wanted to say, you're wasting your money. It's going to break or you're going to lose it or you won't care for it. But I really had to let them fail, you know, and let them learn on their own. It took a bit, but they learned it.
Wow. Okay. Did you reward them along the way? Like, do you have any sort of like reward system to incentivize wise choices that you want them to make?
I give them a lot of verbal rewards, you know, instead of giving them things. You know, because then they get dependent on that, right? But we talk about it. Hey, that was a great decision you made. Look, you're getting older and you're making a wiser decision. I'm so proud of you. And then I would tell them why it was a good decision, right? That yes, it must be really hard for you not to buy that toy, but you didn't. And look, you got money in your pocket. Doesn't it feel good to have money in the pocket? You knowing that maybe next week you would have $10 now instead of $5, and now you can buy something that's a little bit better, sturdier, something that you want. That's what my reward for them is, more verbal, you know, say, hey, wow, that was amazing what you did, instead of giving them things.
And I can see how this helps them internalize what you're teaching them. Because at the end of the day, what we've learned is kids that are younger than 10 years old, sometimes the knowledge you're trying to teach them, they retain for a very short amount of time. The way you're talking them through how you would think about it, it definitely makes it part of their being, who they are. I think that's an awesome job that you're doing as a parent. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
Good. You know, obviously you mentioned that you're raising your kids as a single mom. You're teaching them that financial mindset and those financial habits. I'm sure their father is also teaching them some things. I'm sure there may be some times that you and the father may not be teaching the exact same thing. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, we do have very different opinions on how kids' finances should work or how much should they know. He believes that, we don't need to really save for kids' college. When they grow older, if they want to go to college, they're smart enough, they'll get a loan and go, right? Mm-hmm. Versus I took those loans and I knew exactly how hard it was to pay them off, right? How long it took me. Versus if I had a launch pad right after when I graduated, I would have been maybe better financial situation. If we do have a differing opinion, but he does teach them how to save. He's a saver. He and I am the risk taker. I'm one of those who would say, okay, I'll save maybe 30% of my income and the rest of it, I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to invest it somewhere. I'll do my due diligence and invest. But then maybe I got that from my father. My dad was that way. He would have a little bit of his saving that he knew that would keep him comfortable for 6 months to a year if something were to happen to his business and keep all of us comfortable. But the rest of it, he always invested and, see how he can make more out of it. So that's the philosophy I always see my dad put it in practice. And my brother is similar way. My brother owns a couple of businesses and he has a similar philosophy versus, my girl's dad, he's very much a saver. He always believes in save, save, save. It's good. The kids need to learn how to save as well. And I appreciate that he teaches that. So, but when they're with me, we talk about a lot of stock market or what happened today. I try not to step on his toes, let him do what he does. We talked about, obviously, as a parent, every parent will always want to teach their kids good values, right? I don't think that him teaching kids how to save or not having to have every single thing under the sun is a bad thing. We try not to step on each other's toes. He understands where I'm coming from and, what I want to do for them. And he appreciates that. And I can appreciate that he teaches them how to save and learn to live with minimum things. You don't have to have gazillion toys.
Wow. Okay. So what I'm hearing is that both of you have different mindset, different philosophies, right? Some of those things that you don't agree on, it's okay. You do try to see the other parent's perspective. Do you actually talk your kids through how you would think about it versus how they're being taught? Do you teach them where you may be a little different in thinking?
Not yet. I think my kids are a little too young to discuss how our teachings differ, but I'm sure kids pick them up as they're older, right? As they grow older. We try not to discuss other parent in front of kids, because then one way or another, you're trying to basically say that their views are different than mine. You don't want to taint them in any way by saying, because it's different, it's wrong, right? So we don't talk about other parents or how they do things or how things are done there. But I do talk to him personally and we talk about, hey, here's the boundaries that I've set in my house. Can we keep it consistent? And same thing, he would say, okay, this is what we started doing something new. Now they're doing their own laundry. Let's keep it consistent. So we communicate on that and kind of keep it clean between us, and kids are not involved in that conversation.
Wow. And you know what? That's very mature of you guys. And it does take that maturity sort of work in unison with each other and not always be butting heads. So that's awesome. That's amazing of you guys. Okay. Now that you are teaching them, now that you're seeing them do some practical things, what are some benefits that you're seeing being realized in your kids as a result of your teachings?
I would say after 2 or 3 years of finally teaching, the greatest, I think, as a parent, you would probably agree with it too. When your kid repeats what you've been teaching them to another kid or somebody else in front of you, right? You're like, oh my God, it's finally sunk in, right?
Yeah.
So I can see them starting to understand it and starting to convey that message to some of their friends. So when we go to some of these garage sales to sell their bracelets, they interact with a lot of kids, right? And sometimes I've seen one of my child say that to another kid who wanted to, blow all of his pocket money and buying gazillion different bracelets because they were so all shiny and so pretty and she couldn't make a decision. And this was, I think, a 6 or 7-year-old kid, a little girl. And my daughter said, are you sure you really want to spend all your allowance on just bracelets? They're just bracelets, You can buy 2 and wear one on what you want each wrist and they'll still be pretty. But guess what? You spend $10, your money would be gone. Just spend 2, just buy 2 and use that $8 for something else. My chest kind of doubles, such a proud woman that I've been teaching this for so long. And now she's actually taking that and teaching to somebody younger than her. And the kid actually listened, and I was so happy. She didn't feel greedy, oh, you're not making $10 in sale right now, But yeah, that was a very proud moment.
That's amazing. Okay. Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay. What do you have some things planned for the future as they continue, growing and understanding more about money? What are some things that you're planning to do with them?
The near future plan is to get them a savings account, something they can actually see with their eyes, right? Instead of right now they're young, so they like counting money. They like counting like, oh, look how many dollar bills I have or how many fives I have. But as they grow a little bit older, I want them to see how the account grows, right? That you can take this money. Or let's say, you went to Nana's house and Nana gave you $20. Like in Indian culture, they always, like to hand out like 5, 10 years. And I say, you can take that money, let's go put it in the bank yourself and see what it looks like when your account goes from $250 to $270. And then, over a year, how much it grew, right? So that is a near future plan. And one of my child who's extremely interested in stocks and she constantly asks for it, I'm going to let her play with the paper money for a few years and see how she does with it. And does she do her own research? She's one of those researchers, She teaches herself a lot of things like this bracelet things that she wanted to do. She went and taught herself. She watched tons of YouTube videos and she figured out how to make some special things so she can make more money out of it, right? Because if nobody else makes it, everybody makes bracelet, but nobody makes like super cool charm bracelets out of it. So she can charge more for it. I can teach her how to do a little bit of research on a company. What do you look for? How do you read a financial statement of a company? Just like a really high level. She doesn't have to know all the details that I learned in my MBA class, but just a really high level on what are the key indicators that you look for. Here are some Fortune 500 companies that has done really well and has a good future. How about you play paper money with that company's stock and see how well you do? So those are the two main things that I'm looking forward to as they grow a little bit older.
Wow. Okay. How are you seeing differences from one child to the other? The way they capture what you're teaching them, is it different? Is it similar? Like, help me understand that a little bit, please.
Yeah, both my kids are night and day, right? So one is extremely logical and practical. And she likes using big words and she understands big words. And with her, I can just tell her how it is. And I wouldn't have to sugarcoat. I do not have to put it in kid language. She may, if she doesn't understand a word, she'll be like, what does it mean? And if I explain it, she gets it. It sticks to her. Like you tell her one time, and if you had her full attention, she got it. You don't ever have to repeat it. While the other one, she's more like, in her own world, a little kind of dreamy, but extremely neat and clean freak and very, very organized. She knows exactly where her things are. With her, I had to kind of get it down to the kids' language, maybe simpler words, simpler sentences. We do a lot of whiteboarding with her. I have to put it down into, this is what it looks like. This is what it is. Here's the numbers. And she understands it that way, right? She's extremely visual. The other one, you talk to her, she gets it. This one is very visual. You got to break it down for her, show it how it works once in order for her to understand it. She's the one who's a saver, by the way, the one who's very organized. She believes in saving every little thing that she's got, including money. She would save pennies. While the other one is like, okay, I saved my money. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to go spend it. Or, I told you I was going to save money to buy me this Lego set. I have $50. Let's go get it. While the other one's like, well, I know I wanted a $50 Lego set, but what if I save a little bit more? I can get a $100 Lego set,
Wow.
Sometimes it becomes a pattern for her where she'll never buy anything that she wants and her delayed gratification keeps getting delayed. So I have to teach her, it's okay to indulge in what you want. It's okay to buy it. So I have to teach her. So that's how they're very different.
Wow. Well, and do you see the interaction between both kids in trying to help the other understand their perspective?
Yes, absolutely. The one who's a saver, she keeps reminding her sister, if you don't buy this right now for $25, Mehak, you can save more money, and 2 months down the road, you would have so much money and you can get that bigger set. And the other one say, I'm happy buying this thing for $25. I've been saving it. I knew exactly what I want. I'm going to enjoy what I have, So they kind of give each other a little bit of both sides, that it's okay to enjoy. And at the same time, it's okay to save.
Wow. They sound like very mature kids. That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay. So it brings us to our very last question that I always love asking my guests. If you could turn back time and talk to your kid self, what advice would you give her about financial thought process?
Financial thought process. I would give her a lot of advice, obviously. I would tell her to start learning how the finances works. How does the bank work? How do you get a loan? How do you
At what age? At what age?
in middle school? Somewhere
Mm.
around like 13, 14, when I started understanding the concept of money. My parents never gave me allowance, but we would go visit my grandma or my nana, and she would always give a little bit of money for like special occasions like Diwali or something special, Ruchita. And then the money that I got during those time. And when you're a little bit older and you're obviously your cousins are older at that time too, so you end up getting a little bit more money instead of like a couple rupees. I think around 13, 14, I will tell myself to start learning how finances work and how do you put money into the bank and what happens to your money when it goes into the bank. I would go back again when I was just starting college, and I would tell my college self, start learning, start building your credit. If you get a credit card, how do you use a credit card? Why is it important to make payments on time? And, credit card is not free money. It's eventually you're the one who's end up paying for it. So those are the two important lessons I would go tell my kids self.
Wow. Thank you, Ruchita. You've been amazing. I think what you're teaching your two daughters, you are definitely modeling amazing mindset for them. But the way you're teaching them, I think it's also teaching them how to learn from each other as well. So I think you're doing an awesome job. Thank you so much for bringing some valuable knowledge that I know a lot of people are going to use. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me on the show. Thank you.
The ideas, techniques, approaches, information, and opinions expressed in this video or podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Sowtastic LLC and its employees. While the primary purpose is to educate and inform, it does not constitute professional advice or services. We hope, however, that the content presented here will assist you in developing a strong financial understanding and mindset. You may not edit, modify, copy, or redistribute this video or podcast with any other website, computer, or playing device. Use of this video or podcast constitutes acceptance of these terms.